Welcome to the Career Jitsu Podcast, where we connect the art of jiu-jitsu with your career. Our mission is to empower and inspire you with engaging conversations and valuable insights from people just like you who benefit from the shared relationship between your workplace and the art of jiu-jitsu, leading you to a more fulfilling and successful life. Welcome to the Career Jitsu Podcast. We are so excited today. We have somebody who is brimming with wisdom. His name is Dan McCarthy. Dan has been around the block in terms of BJJ. He is very well known in the BJJ community. When I first met Dan, he filled out our waitlist form, and I was not sure I was going to know him because he is from Tennessee. And then I got talking to him and found out that he is actually from Boston, right from where we are, Frank. So he went to Boston College, just like Frank. And so he grew up in Boston. He went to Boston College and lived out in the Boston area. Actually started jiu-jitsu in Boston at Boston BJJ with Roberto Maya back in 1996. So as you can imagine, he knows a lot of people in the BJJ world. So we are honored to have him on our podcast. So that is his little bit of an overview of his BJJ experience. Now, professionally, Dan is very impressive, multifaceted in his career experience because he wrote a book. He's an author of a book that he's going to talk about. He wrote a #1 bestseller that he goes around talking about. It's called Satan's War Against God. So he's going to talk a little bit about that. He has been a money manager for 35 years. So which is very interesting. Frank loves the idea of the fact that he has 35 years of experience in money management because that's right on Frank's wavelength, right, Frank?
Absolutely. Same thing, man.
Not only that, but he is also an entrepreneur. On top of all of this, he's an entrepreneur. He owns an academy called Memento Combat Sports in Tennessee, a very successful academy. Has a lot of programs there. And he also is an entrepreneur in the sense that he started a farm store with an ice cream shop, a coffee shop. So let's just get this rolling because we have so much wisdom, so much knowledge for our listeners to absorb today. So welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction.
Well,
I appreciate you guys.
the introduction was absolutely earned. Before in the pre-interview, Jason and I were talking, we're like, how does one person do so many things at such a high level? And it must be a genetic thing, or there's a double of you. Somehow you're living two lives, but to be writing a book, touring, talking about your book, doing all this, you've trained with Bernardo Feria, just so interesting, so eclectic. So it's going to be, this is going to be a challenge to fit everything we want to fit into this one episode, but we're going to do our best. We're very excited to have you, fellow Eagle. Let's go. And so let's start out a little bit let's talk about your career, starting all the way back at your days in Boston College and how you grew into becoming a money manager. What are some of the things that you've learned? I'm definitely going to pick your brain because I have students that listen to this podcast. We talk about money all the time, about investing all the time. So I definitely want to get some of your, maybe your top 3 things to help young people build wealth would be great. Learn about that career, learn about you becoming an entrepreneur, which is a little bit of a different skill set, what you've learned from that, and then go into your BJJ career. So let's start with you back heading to Boston College. Take it from there.
Well, when I was a teenager, I came from a broken family and I was literally homeless when I was 15. So I lived in the basement of a barn and there was no heat in the barn. My parents had gotten divorced and it was kind of ugly. So everything got a little bit messy, which was, looking back, a huge blessing because we can either define ourselves by our challenges or we can define our challenges. And so to make a long story short, rather than sit around and whine about it, I decided that, I could either go down the path of destruction, like so many of my friends went down, or I could say, well, you know what, I'm going to try to make something of this. So when I was 15, I started a small construction company, started painting and did gutters and stuff like that. I didn't have a license. So basically I partnered with some guys that were a little bit older that did have a license in a van. They had a little bit of skill. And my job was always to manage people on the job and to help them get to work and get the work done correctly and win the work. So we did condo conversions when I was 16 in Boston. My job was basically to get a whole crew of workers together so we could get, the job done. So I was always looking for what's known as subject matter experts that were already successful. And I tried to work with subject matter experts in order to bring, talent and labor to them. So that gets back to the entrepreneurial spirit that you asked about. Because, for instance, one of my boys, I have 5 kids, and one of my kids wanted to sell home security systems. So I talked to him about that and I said, always sell the best product that you can. Always go out and find the company that has the highest quality, the best revenue, and a higher price point as well. So getting back to construction rather than just to painting of houses locally, I went to a general contractor after doing a little bit of research, knocked on his door, who was doing condo conversions in Boston. And I said, I can bring you 10, 15 guys to work because at that time there wasn't enough labor, and I can get them to the job on the time and I can get them away from the job. And ironically, the way that I connected with him was through Bob Vila. And Bob Vila, he ran a rehab show. Bob Vila, what the heck?
The famous, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
The guy
so
who teaches people how to do home repairs.
That's right. And so I connected with him through his partner, Norm, who was the brains behind their operation. And so I was working with Norm when I was 14 and 15 because he was working in Westwood, picking up basically garbage, and he taught me how to do a little bit of painting. So in life, people are put in your way, and you can either recognize an opportunity or you can walk right by them and not recognize an opportunity. So Norm, Bob Vila's, I guess you'd say protege, they had the biggest, home TV show in the world at one point. He was a really cool guy. And I said, well, you know what? Just like my son telling him to go sell the most expensive, best product on the market, I said, well, you know what? This guy is the best in the business, and I'm going to try to latch my, keys into his engine. So that's how the construction thing started. And really what it afforded me to do was start to build out a business where I could afford to go to Boston College because I paid for BC on my own. So while I was going to college, I worked full time and went to college. So what I learned during that experience is that we can either have the clock control us or we can control our clock in our life. So I think that I've always been very disciplined because of the fear that was instilled in me that I might be homeless and not be able to pay my bills in the future. So I remember sitting down saying, I need to make sure that every moment of my life is used productively and is moving towards a goal. So when I was 15, 16, 17, I built out this little business, and it grew to the point where it gave me the ability to go to college. And so once I was in college, I continued the business, and I also worked as a waiter and a line cook because I was able to get free food. So I worked at a country club, Charles River Country Club. And what was beautiful about it is I could go there, and it was down the street from Boston College, and they always had to have more food because if you ever ran out of food for the members would be furious. So there was always extra food. So I would come back to my friends at Boston College with like bags filled up with food. They'd be drinking a keg, and I'd come in with like filet mignon and stuff like that. They'd be like,
Damn, they must have loved you.
So it
Wow.
worked out really, really well. So that was kind of a long story. I tried to consolidate it into one, but I was very blessed that literally when I was going through a hard time, they were doing a This Old House from Westwood. You can still go by the house. I knocked on the door. I asked if I could work there. They said yes. And one thing led to another.
Wow. So
Wouldn't it?
one of your secrets is to ask, is to look and then ask. Just look for something and then ask, "Hey, would you be interested in working with me? Can I work with you?"
Yep.
So you literally knocked on the door, which is a great analogy, right?
Mhm.
You
Yes.
literally knocked on a lot of doors. And I'm sure not every time you knocked on a door it opened.
No doubt. No doubt. You know, it's a numbers game. So most people allow their mind to stop them from knocking because they create excuses. I'm poor because this person did that to me. I grew up with a crappy family. So since, my dad was bad to me or, my mother wasn't present or whatever it might be, it gives me an excuse to just be angry at the world.
You know, it's
So,
funny that you said that. I don't mean to cut you off. Before you said it, I wrote your philosophy of no excuses because everything that you set up to this point was a legitimate excuse for you to become, I don't want to say a loser, but somebody who's losing in life. All the things that you have said up to this point were legitimate excuses, legitimate for somebody to
yep.
say, well, of course he's not doing well. Look, he was homeless. He was living in a barn. What do you expect from that kid? But from 15 years old, you made zero excuses. You just looked for solutions.
Yeah. So, just like everyone, I've made a lot of stupid mistakes in my life. But what I've tried to do is balance out the stupidity and try to learn from it.
Wow.
So I'm far from perfect. But what I do is when I get knocked down, I get right back up and try to figure out how to use that experience to learn from and never make the mistake again. And I make mistakes again because I'm far from perfect, but I think that I tend to make fewer mistakes. I learn from my errors and I thank God for my errors because you learn how not to be. So, I think that, for instance, with knocking on, the house that they were doing for this old house, I did it with my brother, Brendan, who is now a commercial roofing contractor in Boston. And so he got involved, in the whole construction trade through Bob Vila and Norm as well. And we all hated Bob Vila because he used to drive up in his little car after blowing lines, and Norm would be like, "This guy is just something else," And Norm was the brilliance
Oh,
behind
so
the whole show.
so he wasn't the artist that we thought he was.
No, Norm was the man, and he had a whole what he was he was the director, and he placed himself in the starring role, and everyone on the set hated him because he was so arrogant and he was offish. He'd sit, getting ready to do his cameos, and all the workers would be sitting around working their tails off, and everybody loved Norm. And so my brother at that time was 12, and he was like, "Yeah, go pick up wood and throw it in the dumpster." And we were like, "Okay, we'll pick up wood, throw it in the dumpster." But he treated us well, and so we, if I hadn't gone through a challenging time in my life with my parents, then I never would have knocked on that door with my brother, and I never would have gone to where I came from too. So I look back at it as a huge blessing.
Wow. So, pressure, it's the pressure that turns coal into diamonds, right?
That's right. Yep, absolutely.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So now you're at Boston College. You have your business. You're doing the side jobs. You had a dual major, history and business, which is like just the fact that you dual majored when you already had to do serving, line cooking, and then your job, and to have a business major at BC, that's challenging. It's not a fluffy major. And then to pick another major. What provoked you or what inspired you to take on a second major with all of these balls up in the air that you're trying to juggle?
So I think that my friends, when I went to BC, I fell into a group of friends from New Jersey, and they were all doing accounting, and they were all in finance. And it's funny because they would go out and have a great time at BC, and they'd go out and be up until 12 or 1 in the morning or later, but they used to get up at 6 and 7 o'clock and do homework. So I noticed that these were guys that knew how to have a good time, but they got up in the morning and did homework. They didn't sit around in bed. Some did, but most of them didn't. Most of them were very focused on their where they were going in their life. So I'm very thankful that they came into my life. And so I kind of just followed in their footsteps, and I ended up finishing, my business degree, due to them. So I give them a tremendous amount of credit, but I recognize that if I wanted to break out of, I guess you'd say, a cycle of poverty, if you will, I needed to look for mentors who, if I emulated them and I looked at how they operated in their life, I could break out of that cycle. So I really kind of followed in their footsteps.
Power of mentorship. Absolutely. So then you graduate and you decide that you want to go into money management.
So it's funny story. I fell into that. You might say fell into that, or it was providential. Won't get into that, but I was at a tailgate for Boston College football when I was a junior. And at that time, BC had kind of fallen from the heights of Flutie, if you will. And they went into a struggling time. So we went back to the tailgate in the halftime, and we didn't go back into the game because they were getting killed. And I was basically, grilling up food with my friends, and this older gentleman, not older, I mean, he's young to me now. He was probably in his 40s. His name was Phil Ferrara. He was parked next to us, and they had run out of food. And so we offered him food, and literally worked for Mass Mutual. And he was an advisor for Mass Mutual. And so he and I just struck up a relationship, and I started to do filing for him in Boston. And so one thing led to another. And so I went into his office, and it was kind of cool because I had to wear a tie and a white shirt. I didn't even own a white shirt, so I went out and I bought one. And I just started to learn how to file, and I started to learn how to work on a computer. And when I was, I think it was November of my senior year, he asked me if I might want to work with him. And I said, sure, why not? And so I had my job lined up after college when I was a junior in, I'm sorry, when I was a senior in college, but it really went back to that tailgate. If BC had been better at football, maybe I never would have gotten that job.
Wow, that's so you offered somebody food. Think about that. You reached out, you're like, hey, we have some extra food here. Come on over. And that led into and think about the path that opened up for you just from that day. It's
Yeah.
an amazing, it's like the butterfly effect, isn't it?
And what's crazy is that's the only football game that I went to when I went to Boston College. The only one that I bought tickets to. And because I was too busy working, because Saturdays running a construction company, I was always working. So it's not that I didn't want to go to the games, but I had to go to my job. So that just happened to be the one that I went to. So pretty interesting.
Well, it does seem, as you said, providential, if you put it that way, right? Like there might have been, it feels like somebody was just turning the gears a little bit in your favor.
That's right. That's right. So it's pretty cool. And, it's funny because when I started working at, you know, at Mass Mutual was the company that hired me, and I ended up veering more into the investment world. But another Boston College graduate that I met on the mats, Kenny Florian, ended up working for me, doing filing for me. So one thing I always wanted to do, since I was hired when I was in school, I wanted to hire a kid out of Boston College. And ironically, Kenny and I met because he came into Boston Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He went to BC. He was a soccer player, incredible athlete, by the way. It's not magic that Kenny has had so much success. He's a super hard worker, super, super smart, but he was a talented athlete before he came to jiu-jitsu, incredibly talented. So to make a long story short, I ended up hiring Kenny, and we've been friends for a long time, doing the same thing I did. So pretty interesting.
So tell us a little bit about what you did at Mass Mutual, and if you could give us, so my students are going to be watching this, high school students, can you give us maybe 3 ways to help? 3 most important things that you think will help a young person build a happy, successful financial future.
So 3 things. 1, take control of your time. Don't allow negative thoughts into your brain. And if you say you're going to do something, do it. Don't have an excuse. Just figure it out and do it. So those are, I think, 3 key areas to running a business, to being a successful financial manager of your own life. And also being able to do that, you can be a mentor in someone else's life because they'll see that you can lead by example.
Wow. Concise and cogent right there.
Oh,
3 things.
thanks. Off
All
the
right.
top
So
of my head.
tell us, tell us about your money management experience. Who did you manage money for? Did you pick stocks? Was it equities and bonds? Was it for private individuals or public corporations or B2B? Tell us a little bit about that and some of the lessons you learned in that in rising in that career.
Absolutely. So MassMutual is a life insurance company, and in 1990, when I was hired by them, they were starting to delve into financial services. And being a 22-year-old kid starting, I was like, I have no life experience. How are people going to buy life insurance from me? You know? And so I was looking for other ways to build my practice. We certainly sold life and disability insurance. Disability was actually easier because that made sense to me more where I was in my life. But there was this new thing called the 401k. I don't know if you've ever heard of this thing called the 401k.
It
Uh,
sounds slightly familiar.
yeah. Well, back then, not a lot of people knew about it. It rolled out of an amendment by William Roth. So we've talked a little bit about Roth IRAs in the pre-interview. Well, he wanted to allow people to defer money into profit sharing plans. And so he's a great hero of the financial services industry, and he doesn't get enough credit. In order to make a profit sharing contribution, a company used to have to make a profit. He said, well, we need to have retirement plans. So let's unhinge, the trailer from that requirement, but let's also let employees contribute to their profit sharing plans out of their own paychecks. So that seemed cool to me because it wasn't life insurance.
Right.
So, not that there's anything wrong with that, but to me, that just seemed cool. And so, what I did, I went to the folks that sold group health insurance and group disability, and I told them that I was an expert at the 401k. I knew nothing about 401k. So, so basically, I said, if you let me talk to your clients about 401k, I'll split the business with you and I'll do all the work and you don't have to do anything except introduce me to your clients. So I went on a crash course and I became, quote, expert at 401k, but I also became, quote, expert at the companies that did offer 401k plans because there were very few back then. It was still in its infancy. So I had a large health insurance broker when I was 22, 23 years old, kind of open up his book of business to me. And I started meeting with his clients and selling 401k plans. And by 1996, I was number 3 in the country for MassMutual selling 401k plans. But the success really came from recognizing that you need to find a mentor and you always go to the top. And this guy, Jack Sheehan, was the largest health insurance broker in Massachusetts. And so rather than start from the bottom, you go right to the top and you ask the question, can I work with you? And a lot of people get intimidated by asking successful people for advice. And what people should be doing is recognizing that successful people are just human. A lot of people shy away from them or they're too kid glovish with them. Just go in and ask the question. And they're human. Just treat them like a human and then create a value proposition for them and really think it through. Don't just say, hey, can you help me? No, figure out a value proposition to show how you can make their life easier, how you can help them perhaps make more money or have less work. And ask the question. And if you ask the question, you'd be surprised that the answer is often yes, let's get it done.
Wow.
Wow, the power, you should write a book on the power of asking because that seems to be one of your greatest strengths. Like, I'm just going to ask. And I do appreciate the way that you say they're just people. People are people. And just because your, I don't know, financial status and your cachet is here and theirs is here doesn't mean anything. They're a person, you're a person. They're going to respect you for asking. It's like automatic respect. So you were just getting into this and you decided to meet with me and you're politely just giving me a value proposition of what you can offer, whether I'm interested or not. They have to respect you because you're jumping into the big ring. You're getting onto the mats. That's instant respect. It's not something that people should be ashamed to do. They should be proud to do it. Whether they get the door slammed in their face or whether they get a big hug and a yes, you got to go like this. I did it. I went in. and I threw in my value.
And that's right. And one shouldn't make assumptions about how they managed their life and how they became successful. Often the most successful folks that I've met came from nothing because they had to fight and claw their way up. And so, when you look at someone who's successful, you can't assume that they were just given stuff. I think that the stats show that if you become millionaire, that the third generation is broke. By the time the third generation comes around, it's broke. So you can't make that assumption that just because you're successful, you were given it.
That's very interesting that you say that, Dan. I have a philosophy that it's very difficult. I think our whole nation is facing this in our culture, like the rise and fall of the American culture, because what you said to me is that people who are hungry, who don't have, that have a need, a vast need just to get a roof over their head and food, those people become outdoor cats. They have to go out into the cold in the winter. They have to use their claws. They have to kill what they eat. They have to bring it back. And whatever that is, they have to make do and then go out and do it again the next day. So what happens is those people, pain is part of their life. Sacrifice is part of their life. So being successful isn't as hard for them because they're used to getting up early. All right, well, this is what I have to do. I don't care about my feelings. It's what needs to get done. But they also think, God, if I could give my children a little better so they don't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go out into the snow and go kill another animal and bring it home, I'm successful. So they
Yep.
do that for the next generation. They still have to go out and hunt a little bit, but they also get like, the fireplace and the heated bed and all that. And then they think, man, I still have to go out and hunt. But if I get to that next level, boy, it'd be nice to give my kids a little bit better than I have. But the problem with that undertow is you eventually create a cat with no claws that has all that wealth, but not the appreciation and the work ethic behind it, which is probably why that third generation sometimes is broken.
That's right. And when I think about give your kids better than you had, it's an interesting philosophical question because oftentimes we reduce success to material goods. And oftentimes, if we haven't had a lot of success or prosperity, we want to give our kids material goods and success because we view that as a bridge away from our past. Whereas I think that what we want to do as parents, and I'm far from perfect when it comes to this, is that the prosperity that we give our kids is our mindset. The mindset that we leave behind with them, what they value, what their morals are, how they view other people, how they view what success truly, that's the prosperity that we leave them. I know plenty of people that are, literally hundreds of millionaires and their kids are just a disaster because they thought if they gave them a nice car or if they paid for everything for them, or they were their friends rather than their parents, and the kids are a disaster. And, you pray for them that they, see the light and maybe some of them will turn around. And none of our kids are guaranteed to become successful and wonderful people. They're all individuals and we have to recognize that. But prosperity is what mental state we leave them, not what we give them.
Wow, that is powerful.
Powerful.
Another book that could be written on that. One of the things that I always tell my students is because I talk about, like I said, we're going to open a real Roth IRA. We're also going to open a regular account for you to build your wealth. And I always tell them, this is not for you to have a better car than everybody else or more square footage in your house. Like that's not like I don't want you to think this is about just avarice. What I really want for you is freedom. I want you to have freedom so that you can do the things that you want to do. If your friend's getting married in Hawaii, I want you to be able to go to that. If you have a boss who is mean to you, who doesn't respect you and calls you out in a meeting in a very disrespectful way, I want you to be able to say to your boss, you don't speak to me like that. You speak to me with respect. Like I give you, you need to reciprocate that. I want you to have that freedom to be nobody's pawn. That has nothing to do with a Rolex watch or a Porsche 911. It has to do with the freedom for you to live a good, clean life, provide for your family. Doesn't matter what brands you wear. Doesn't matter how many square feet your house is, but for you to be a free individual without the shackles of debt and having to answer to other people. That to me is a better definition of wealth building than your portfolio?
Well, you said it perfectly. I have nothing to add to that because, debt can be slavery if you don't know how to use it correctly. Debt does not have to be slavery if you know how to utilize it. Freedom is really having the joy and the ability to pursue your dreams in terms of what you want to do. I know plenty of folks that do, if you were to look at it from the world's perspective, they make very moderate incomes, but they have wonderful families, wonderful kids. They have a great relationship with their community, and they're blessed beyond all measure. And I work mostly with high net worth people. Some of them are absolutely wonderful. Some, it's just an absolute disaster. So money does not equate to joy and happiness. So freedom is really joy.
Absolutely. Wow. Wow. What a great way. Sorry, Jason, I'm hogging up all the questions, but
Frank,
you
I
can.
have just so many things in my head going on and right now that I opened up this whole episode saying that this is going to be brimming with wisdom. And we are listening right now to a very extraordinary individual with a very extraordinary mindset. So I have some things written down here, if you don't mind, just as kind of like a little recap of what the last like 30 minutes that we've been in discussion. Success isn't given, it's earned. Learn how to not be. We can always control the clock in our own life. Never have a victimized mentality. We reduce success to material goods. Like these are just like quotes that I wrote down that we just got today from this podcast. So Dan, you started, you were successful, had that success mindset already prior to discovering BJJ. So can you help our listeners understand how like you transitioned to like you found BJJ and did you use a lot of this mindset to have success in BJJ? Because we talk a lot in our podcast about how BJJ concepts that people learn can apply to their life to help them be successful in their career. And I feel like with you, you already had this mindset of success even before discovering BJJ. So did that help you achieve your success in jujitsu as well?
I think so. Yeah, I know so. I think one of the more interesting things about getting on the mat is that you're constantly working with another partner. So you're not just in your own headspace. You have to interact with someone else. And in order to stay on the mat, you have to pay attention to a lot of different details. You have to pay attention to how much sleep you get, what you're eating, your fitness level outside of the gym. So when you come to the gym, you don't get injured. A lot of injuries, I think, come from the fact that you're not well prepared when you get to the mat. Also, I guess you'd say the art of jujitsu is so rapidly expanding at all times. You need to have an expanding mind. You have to look at the art as something that's not static, but something that is constantly evolving. And I think a good example is the how wrestling now has become a true base of jujitsu. And when I'm going to be 58 on Monday, but I started formal wrestling classes when I was 55, and I had been training jujitsu for 27 years. I had done some stand up, grappling and stuff like that, but never formally, just kind of like, okay, do a single leg or whatever. But you constantly have to come to the mat expecting to learn something new. And you also have to rely on your partners and your teammates to help put pressure on you so you can grow and evolve. So I think that that's something that I had brought from my business life and my life experience, which I think allowed me to be able to stick with the jujitsu game and continue growing in the jujitsu game for the past 30 years. Does that
Yeah,
make
so
sense?
yeah, it does. It helps people, I think that, already, jujitsu is for everyone. Well, maybe not, I shouldn't say for everyone, but it can be for everyone. And, I think it's interesting perspective, a little bit of a twist on things in terms of mindset for success, because we have so many different walks of life that discover jujitsu. And I feel that more and more now in modern times, we run into people who discover jujitsu later in life and they already are successful people. in their careers, and then they
Mhm.
find jujitsu after, and then they apply all those things, those life lessons that they learned on the mats, and then they start to realize, wow, look at the relationship between jujitsu and life and my career. You know?
Sometimes it involves hanging out with like-minded people because I think to succeed in any sport, but jujitsu in particular, you need to be fully committed and you need to control so many different aspects of your life in order to get to the mat. So, for instance, when I teach, if someone shows up to my class and let's say that they're whatever in their 30s or 50s and they're peeling off their business suit or they're, taking their shirt off because they just came from, a landscaping gig, I respect the fact that they worked really hard to step through that door. So to me, the fact that they were willing to make that sort of effort commands my respect. So when I teach a class, I need to find out where they are, meet them where they are, and try to make that hour and a half of their time incredibly value and well spent because I respect their time and what they had to go through in order to get on that mat. Sometimes they have to get on that mat and they're tired, they've been up late, what they might have had a sleepless night with a newborn baby. And so I try to make sure that they have as good of experience as possible. So maybe I won't put them with the 22-year-old who's practicing for ADCC world trials. Or maybe that 22-year-old is the perfect partner because he gets it. He totally gets it. So not to stereotype them. Sometimes the most dangerous folks are the folks that are, at white belts, for lack of a better term, and they're there to just kind of go nuts. So sometimes it's easier to go with a more experienced person because they get it. So I try to make sure that I look at each person that walks through that door, respect the experience that they're going through in their life, and make sure when they walk out that door, they have the best possible experience and they can get back to their crazy life. And maybe they're a little bit more refreshed.
Yeah, that
Nice.
correlates a lot into your career too. As you mentioned about that, it's you don't really it's stereotypical of somebody who is an ADCC champion. Like people are intimidated to roll with them and learn from them because they think they're going to crush them, and that correlates a lot into your professional life too. Before, you were talking earlier about not being intimidated by talking and asking questions to successful people, and
Mhm.
that, so you realize that through jujitsu, that not the biggest, strongest people are sometimes the nicest people, always willing to help you, and you kind of learn that in your career and in jujitsu.
That's right. That's right. So, for instance, when I was 49, I rebuilt my jujitsu career. I had had some injuries, and Bernardo Faria opened up an academy in Bedford. And so I had popped a rib and I had been out of jujitsu for a little bit. I was only training very, very moderately, just a few days a week, and doing more lifting and swimming actually to try to rehab my body. And I walked through the door at Bernardo's and I introduced myself to him, and we immediately became great friends. Now, he was at the top of the game at that time. And just like talking to Norm, or just like, walking right in and asking Jack Sheehan, who is the top health insurance producer, if I could work with him. I took his class and I walked up to him afterwards and I said, I would love to train with you. And he said, Dan, we would love for you to train with us. And so, to make a long story short, you always go to the top of the food chain and you'd be surprised by what you find. He is the nicest guy in the world. We're incredibly good friends. And, when I would roll with him initially, I would be scared to death because I'm 158, 160, and he's a big, strong guy. Uh, and he would definitely put the pressure on me and it would definitely hurt. But he knew how to roll with me to get the best out of me that I could get out of him. I'll never forget, and I think that he'll remember this if he watches this podcast. He was in an over under with me, and I'm pretty good at defending over under, and I have a pretty good crucifix. And I hopped up into a crucifix with him, and I got on his back on a crucifix, and he sat down and he said, Danny, that's a great move, but just wait until I get you out of that move. And the whole class was there, and I said, uh-oh. So
I can hear him saying that, like in my
Yeah, I
ear.
can
I
hear
can
the
actually
accent.
hear him saying that.
exactly.
Did he get out? Did he get out?
So he definitely got out, but I survived. I remember looking up at the clock and there was 2 minutes and 12 seconds left, of the round. I remember looking right at that clock and I said, well, this is going to determine whether I live or die.
You held on as long as you could, but over 2 minutes is a long. Our listeners who don't do jujitsu don't understand how long 2 minutes can be.
Yeah.
Which by the way, if you look at my name on the screen,
Yeah.
the clock burner,
I love it.
because I have all kinds of techniques to burn clock before I start.
Exactly.
So,
Frank, this is a little pitch right here, Frank. I think Bernardo should consider getting us onto the BJJ Fanatics so we can do a video on how to
clock
burn the
burning techniques by the
clock
master.
burning techniques.
Listen, Dan, I have a purple belt in jujitsu, but I have a black belt in clock burning.
That's the problem with no gi. You can't retie your belt in the middle of a round.
Oh, you could listen. I have adjustments. I have all kinds. Listen, my list goes. I'm telling you right now, when we do our little seminar on clock burning, you're gonna get free admission to that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We got you covered, always. Can you tell us a little bit about Jason? Do you think we can switch over to talking about his book a little bit? I want to hear about that. Something totally different.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have so much to discuss. Why not?
All right.
Absolutely. Well, I've done a lot of biblical research in my life. I was not a believer. I was an atheist for a long time. I used to debate at Harvard atheism and advocate for that position. And one thing, led to another, and I actually got saved on the mat. So one of my friends, Paul Rowe, just challenged me to read the Bible. And so over 2 years, I fought him tooth and nail because I was a wicked smart guy from Boston. I knew everything. I hung out in Harvard, and I hung out at the park and I knew everything that was up. I knew that we came from nothing, And so to make a long story short, without getting into any sort of testimony, I had no interest in being a believer because I wanted to be the man who created my own destiny. So that's always what drove me. But things changed. So you fast forward after, I moved me and my 5 kids down to Tennessee. I started going to this small church down here, and I had been doing a whole bunch of kind of apologetic research. I have a master's in the philosophy of science and theology from Biola. And so I was at a conference and God placed it on me. He said, you have to write a book. And I said, nope, I have no time to write a book. I'm too busy. I have no interest. And then he said, you need to write a book. And I said, oh, evidently I have to write a book. So what I did was I changed my clock. I got up every morning at 5 o'clock and I wrote for 47 straight days between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the morning. And I wrote this book. And, I thought, how am I going to get this thing published? And so I sent it to a publisher and they got back to me and they said they wanted to publish it. So that's basically what happened.
So you sent it to a publisher and they're like, yeah, we'll publish it.
Yeah. So,
do you know how many times Harry Potter had to get sent out until somebody took it? Like hundreds. Wow. So your book got instantly published. Can you tell us a little bit about what the theme is and what a reader would take away from your book?
Sure. So basically it tracks the fall of Satan in heaven, and it looks at the world through the lens of Satan's fall.
Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt you, just so because I'm not
Sure.
very schooled on religion. Is that the Old Testament?
It's all the way the Old Testament, all the way through the New Testament up until today's time.
Okay.
So I basically view the world through the war between heaven and earth, and the wars in the heavens and the war on the earth, and how they're the exact same war that we're all engaged in, whether we recognize it or not, and where that struggle comes from. Why doesn't God just, if he is all powerful, if he can snap his fingers and make all bad things go away? So why is the world designed that way? And what is the ultimate resolution to the war that Satan has declared on God? And how is that going to wrap up? So basically, I cover a lot of issues, from philosophical issues to theological issues to humanism. So that's basically a wide cross section of how I pull the story together to help explain why the world operates the way the world operates.
That is fascinating. Jason, we have to connect him to his name is
You,
you're
Ben,
better. Yes,
Ben
Ben,
Shaw. Yeah.
who wrote his book, his apology book, right?
Oh,
We have
wow.
to make sure we just interviewed somebody who studied theology and wrote an apology for Christ, and
Okay.
very
It's
interesting
the episode
conversation.
is out this week. You can
I,
check it
I
out. It
saw
came
I
out this
saw
week.
that, and I'm actually good friends with Gary Habermas, who is I actually liked and commented on that little clip, so I'd love to talk to him. But Gary and I are friends, and so he is famous for debating Anthony Flew, who was the most famous atheist of the 20th century. And Anthony Flew is an Oxford philosopher, and Gary, through his minimal facts approach to showing how the resurrection is historically reasonable to believe in, really brought Anthony Flew out of atheism into, we're not exactly sure where he ended up, but he was a theist by the time he died.
Wow, wow, serious
Dan, is
stuff.
there anybody you do not know? Like you are friends with so many people that it's just like the connections that you have. It's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, God is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So your book, how can people get it? We can put a link on our site for
Oh,
your
thank you.
book.
It's on Amazon. So
Oh, it's
Satan's
on
War.
Amazon.
Yeah, Satan's War Against God on Amazon. Yep. You can look it up, all the reviews and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
it's there.
Okay,
Well,
so I'm going to ask you my simple question that I asked Ben. I'm curious how you'll answer it. It's not really a simple question because it never gets, I guess for me, it never gets a clear answer, but no, it gets a clear answer, but I'm not sure it always resonates with me. So can you try to address the question of, so the three things always put out like this: all powerful, all knowing, and all good.
Hmm.
If you take one of those away, the argument logically makes sense.
Hmm.
But if you add all three, it's hard to make sense because most people, like when you were talking about why is the world the way it is right now, and the reason that most people give who are schooled in religion and philosophy will say, because he wanted you to have free will. So if you have free will, you have to be able to accept that things don't always go your way. My question is, when he created everything, if he was all knowing, he knew exactly, like the Garden of Eden, he knew
Hmm.
that that was going to happen. Like he
Hmm.
knew it. So it's if he knew it was going to happen and he's all good, why would he have created it? He could have done a better job. Don't you think he could have done a better job in creating free will with a propensity to be better and kinder, so the free will would manifest itself in, like, oh, you're an artist. That's how you express you still make your own decisions, but the propensity for evil is so great in our world right now. Couldn't he have done a better job? Like, if you were his teacher, wouldn't you grade him a little more harshly? And say, listen, you had all the power, and you also knew what you were going to do and how it would go, and you are all good. This is the best product that you could make. Look at kids getting cancer, war, disease, poverty, destruction, greed, all of these things. Like, you couldn't do a better job with you're Superman. You have all the powers. How would you answer that question?
Well, first of all, that is the most important question that any human can ever ask. It is the most important question. In fact, when you take a look at most atheists or agnostics or even non-believers, that is their biggest hangup. How can the world operate the way it operates if there's an all good, all knowing God? It just doesn't seem conceivable. It really doesn't. It's almost impossible to explain that away with the simple argument that, well, he gave humans free will, and so he has to allow this to play out. So it's a very challenging question. And I think that what often Christian apologists and theologians come up with is they go right to try to an explanation to try to say, well, it's since we have free will, or which we do, we have free will, or since, this is the best that he could do. And it's not a satisfying answer at all. In fact, I think that that question is the question that defines humanity. That is the question that should drive us from the day that we start. What God has placed on our heart, that's what we're struggling with from the beginning. And that's a question that each of us must struggle with, and we must come up with our own answer. So my answer isn't going to be the same as your answer. And I'm not a relativist. That's an absolutely true statement, because we all have different circumstances that we could point to, which would make us say, okay, well, I'm just going to drink for the rest of my life, or I'm going to blame everybody else for my problems. And I think that it is absolutely true that God created not just humans with free will, but he also created the angels with free will. And that's part of the reason I wrote my book. And so much of the destruction in this world has to do with the dynamic duo, the fallen angels partnering up with humans to overthrow God. We live in a world where we're trying to overthrow God. We're trying to rise to the throne. For instance, in the Tower of Babel, when they were building a tower to reach the heavens, what they were actually doing is they were calling their quote pagan gods down so they could partner up and overthrow Yahweh. That's what their job was. So I think that to answer your question very specifically is that we live in a war zone. And could God have created a world that wasn't a war zone? God can't create anything that's not logically possible. And so when you couple free will both with the angels and humans and the fact that we are trying to overthrow God's kingdom, I think that this is probably the world that best reflects the struggle that we go through in order to basically overthrow God. And that's pretty much what the book's about. But there's something else. And J.R.R. Tolkien, this is a long answer because I don't want to give a quick answer. J.R.R. Tolkien actually addressed this in Lord of the Rings. He said that one of the gifts that were given to men and that were not given to the elves was the gift of death. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a
I'm not.
gift. Yeah, it's one of the more profound philosophical points in Lord of the Rings. The elves just kind of live forever, and they live a very cold existence, and they just kind of fade as time goes on. But men are given the gift of death. So one can argue that since when Adam and Eve fell in the garden, God said, "You will surely die." That gets back to free will. It's a gift that the angels weren't given, that man was given. Death is a gift to us because it allows us to escape this world in order to live in an eternity where there is no pain, there is no entropy, there is no second law of thermodynamics, there is no rebellion against God. And so death, in fact, is a gift. And I think that to circle back to what you were saying, all these terrible things that happen in this world, God will make them right. He will rescue his people. He will allow death to happen so we can escape the throngs of cancer. I had a 10-year-old sister who was desperately autistic, and she ended up dying because her medicine was messed up, and she died a terrible, awful death. She was the one who actually led me to faith, along with my friend Paul Rowe, because I started questioning my atheism when she died, because I said there must be something more purposeful to this life rather than just our short temporal existence. So I think that when we take a look at the world and all the problems in the world, and then we take a look at our lifespans, it could be one day, it could be 10 years, it could be 100 years. They're very short in terms when you compare that to eternity. And in eternity, we will live without sin, we will live without pain, without cancer, without death. And that's just the way God set it up, because he thinks that in his infinite wisdom, we must not judge God. We must recognize that he believes that this was the way it had to unfold so we could share eternity with him. And we may not like that. And that answer is not going to satisfy a lot of people, but it gets back to what I talked about a little bit earlier, that what values are we really passing on to our children? Are our values avoiding pain? Are our values having things? Are our values having security? Well, what God's passing on to us is when we live in a world faced with destruction, faced with divorce, homelessness, pain, drug addiction, and we deal with that all day long. What is he creating? What is he working through? He works all good things for those that love him. And you take a look at a lot of very successful and compassionate people in the world. And they often went through the most difficult, painful struggles. And they're able to take those experiences and spread joy throughout the world and spread hope throughout the world. So, in his infinite wisdom, and people can reject this argument, in his infinite wisdom, he set the world up to extract the maximal amount of joy and the maximal amount of love in order to prepare people for eternity. I'll say one other thing, though. It's okay to reject that argument. You don't have to believe that that's true. In fact, Einstein very much was a deist, but he could not answer this question that you just asked. He was interviewed over and over again that he said the famous quote, God does not play dice. Okay. He's in control of everything. But Einstein was also a deist because he could not reconcile the pain of the world with an all-knowing, all-loving God. So you're going to have to struggle with that question for the rest of your life. It's not going to be an easy answer. And I think that that's what defines humanity.
Wow. And that, that is the lore of deism, right? Because the lore of deism is like, well, hey, he wound up the clock, he threw it out into the universe, and hey, let's see how this goes.
That's right.
Is kind of a,
I think that humans want simple solutions so we can put pain behind us.
yeah.
So we want to solve problems so we can get on to what we perceive as luxury or joy. And if you take a look at Buddhism is really suppressing all of our experiences so we become nothing. It's really not nothing. What it is, it's about eliminating all of our desires so we have no pain. And I think that when people question whether there can be an all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful God, but there's still pain in this world, that has led to deism, it's led to Buddhism, it's led to a lot of different philosophies because man doesn't want to have pain. Man doesn't want to struggle. It's just like the McDonald's black belt, back to jiu-jitsu. We want to purchase our black belt. We don't want to go through the grind and the pain. I mean, through jiu-jitsu, I have a permanently broken finger from my friend John Connors Mixed Martial Arts. John and I are good friends. I was his first teacher, as he'll tell you, a good Hobbit boy. And, I have broken ribs. I got a collapsed trachea from getting struck in the throat when teaching a seminar, and I went out and I was out of jiu-jitsu for 8 months. So I take a look at all the pain that I've gone through jiu-jitsu to basically get to the point where I am now. And if I weren't willing to go through all that agony and pain, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And in 10 years, I'm going to be 58 on Monday. I'm going to be better in 10 years than I am right now. I'm going to continue pursuing this art, and I'm going to do everything I can to stay on the mats. And I'm on the mat 6 days a week between an hour and a half and 2 hours a day. And I'm going to continue to get on the mat and learn from everybody that I can learn from. So for instance, yesterday, to make a long story short, I was pretty tired. I just taught a class and I jumped into the wrestling class, and the teacher is an amazing wrestler. And he decided to make me work my ass off yesterday. And I was like, what clock card can I pull out of my pants so I don't have to work so hard? And there was nothing that I could pull out. So he, quote, wanted to pay me back for all the jujitsu that I've taught him. And he made me pay. And he taught me how to properly do a high C double crotch takedown. And I didn't want to do it. I was too tired. But then I sat down and I said, well, you know what? If I'm going to go through this pain, once this class is over with, I'm going to be way better than I was beforehand. So I think that God might be doing that to allow his free creatures and free agents to go through a tremendous amount of pain in order to forge themselves so they're ready for eternity.
Wow, that was very eloquently stated. And Dan, that is the story of your life from 15 years old in the barn to where you are today. All the harsh situations that you face, you're now grateful for. So that's a nice philosophy. I can see value in your philosophy like that. Like, well, if you look back right now, if I asked you, do you wish you never had to stay in that barn without the heat? You'd be like, no. I mean, it sucked, but I'm glad I did it because it pushed me to go out and start my painting and start getting into construction, and it made me do that. So yeah, it was uncomfortable for a little while, but after a while I had my own business. And
I,
so the
I,
the the pain
I
and
appreciate that.
sacrifice.
I
Yeah,
appreciate that. That's why I think that that question is never really it's a incredibly powerful, legitimate based question. It never really hung me up because I've been through so much in my life. And so, I have a belief that if you get up and you keep moving, then you will find the promised land. And for instance, like when my father cheated on my my mom with his secretary and broke the family up, one of my goals was to be a dad to my kids and not cheat on my wife, hook up with my secretary, and then break up a family. So I had to go through that cauldron in order to recognize what I needed to be. So I think a lot of what we learn in life is who not to be and not to make those errors. So I thank God that my dad was a philanderer, an adulterer, and a family destroyer because he taught me exactly who not to be.
right, right.
Wow.
It's a power. Now, do you talk about your personal in your book? Do you talk about your personal journey, or is it more laying out your philosophy?
It's just laying out my philosophy. So I did not incorporate my life into the book. It's a great question, but yeah.
I think when people see this interview, I think they're going to want to read your book because your
100%.
story, I don't know, I think it adds credibility to your philosophies, to your religious philosophies, because you've actually been there. You've seen the struggle, you've done the struggle, you've grown from the struggle. You tried all these things, you put yourself out there, you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and to go from homeless to where you are, I mean, that is an inspirational story. So I feel like if people understand your story, they're gonna wanna understand both your philosophy and your religious thoughts if they're interested in.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a huge blessing being on this show. So thank you guys.
My gosh, really, I'm almost intimidated to try to pull out the common denominators. Jason, do I have time to do a wrap up? It's your favorite time of the program, tap out time, where we take all the golden nuggets that we've learned from Dan and we try to wrap them up and give them to you to take away. So, Dan, I mean, look at my notes. Look at my notes. This is going to be very challenging. And usually what I do while somebody's talking, I usually start to go backwards and I star what I want to talk about. But I was so wrapped in this that I didn't have time to organize it, but I'm going to do my best. Here we go. Buckle up. Helmets on, goggles on, let's go.
Thank you.
One of the things that I want to tell my business students and anybody who's doing business, I love your idea of sell the best quality at the highest price point. So anybody who's going into sales, think about that. If you want to sell cars, find the car you love that you think is the best, high price point, and go and then represent that company. That's a great thing for anybody getting out there into P2P, person to person, business to B2B sales. Get the best quality products. It'll make your life easier and you'll probably make a little extra money doing it too. Next, something that you absolutely exemplify is that you believe in no excuses. You are where you are. Okay, I'm here. I'm not going to use that as an excuse. I'm going to try to find a way to solve the problem. So, your life is an exact opposite of victimology. You are a person who had every single right, every right. In fact, even successful people would not have blamed you if you turned out bad from what you had to face early on. But you said, no, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm going to go out there. And then this leads me to my next point, which I always teach my students. My students always ask me, Mr. D, can we take a break? Not right now, but I appreciate that you asked. I like people who ask for what they want. Mr. D, can you give us a bonus? Right now, I can't give you a bonus, but I'll consider it in the future. But I like that you asked. I respect you for asking. Always ask. Sometimes kids come to me, Mr. D, I have half a point. If you give me half a point, I can have an A instead of an A minus. You came, you asked, you got it. It's a half a point. Absolutely. Asking. What you have taught us is ask the people who are killing it in what you want to do. If you can come aboard the ship, whatever they need. I'll scrub the deck. Let me be on your ship. I'll cook the food. Let me be on your ship. I like your ship. I respect you. You're a great captain. Let me on your ship. And people are people, and a lot of people love to mentor other people. You come to them, you ask, and you shall receive. Another thing that I think you have that's very impressive is you're humble. We know that jujitsu teaches you to be humble because no matter how you have a fourth degree black belt, but I'm sure there's somebody who taps you out sometimes. And that makes you jujitsu keeps you humble. But I also noticed whenever you were saying something that you've done well, you've always said, I'm far from perfect. I make a lot of mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. You just gotta learn from them. Staying humble and appreciating your mistakes is a good thing to learn from is a great philosophy. You talked about what every successful person talks about. Get good mentors. Find somebody doing what you want to do, connect with them, bond with them, and you will become like them. Everybody out there, listen to me. If you want to be good at finances, find somebody who's good at finances. Make a bond with them. You want to be good at doing the guillotine? Find somebody who's good at the guillotine. You'll be great at it. You want to learn to run? Go with a runner who does it competitively. You're going to be a good runner. The building off of that, one of the things that you've taught us is the power of people. Nobody does it alone. You are a master at connecting with other people, either with purpose, like I'm going to go knock on your door, like you did at the abandoned house, or just by being a fluid social person at the Boston College tailgate. Man, buddy, you're out of food. Here's some food. That guy opened the door to your entire career. And on the flip side, a lot of our guests talk about the community they call their BJJ dojo home. And that community is always opening doors. Like you said, your friend Kenny rolled with you on the mats. You're like, oh yeah, I'm from BC too. And then you helped him with your money managing career. You actually got him a job where you worked. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, students of business, take note. Actually, students of life, take note. 3 cogent steps to reach success. Number 1, take control of your time, lest it take control of you. Number 2, stop your negative thoughts. You can't not think of a negative thought, but you can replace it with a positive thought.
That's right.
Number 3, be truthful to yourself. Do not say you're going to do something unless you're going to do it. It's easy. If you're not good at that, just start with little things. Don't promise yourself anything big. Make little promises and keep them. Once you're true to yourself, then you're your own advocate and you can move ahead. Next, always offer a value proposition to anybody you're asking something to. Give them something in return. And I like the way you said, a lot of times it's easy. I could either help you make more money, or I could take work off your desk. I can make your life easier. Very important. Quid pro quos are very important. I think one of the deepest things we talked about, and I love that you brought this up, you said success is not material goods. Don't do that to yourself. Success is a mindset. All parents, take note. You can't buy your child's happiness, but you can give them happiness by giving them the right mindset of being a kind, decent person who takes care of themselves and the people around them, and also builds financial stability so they can help themselves and help other people. That is true wealth. That right there could be a book. You could write a book on that. That's your next book. The value of BJJ, you said, is interacting with other people, knowing how to meet other people where they are, knowing how to put pressure on other people so that they learn, and having those other people do the same for you. That could be said on the mat, but it also can be said about the business community. Find people that put pressure on you, that help you grow, because it's only through the pressure that you grow. By the way, this has nothing to do with takeaways, but kudos to you for doing wrestling. At your age, kudos to you for doing the takedowns in wrestling. because that I don't do that, but you've kind of inspired me. Maybe we have a wrestling class on Sundays. Maybe I'll try one of those. Hopefully I won't. I hopefully won't regret it. But when you said that you do wrestling, it's like, this guy's a badass. That's just really impressive at your age to do that. Another thing, I know I'm going on and on. I'll try to get to the end here. Another thing I liked that you said is you need to be with like-minded people, which reminds me of a quote: "Tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are." Surround yourself with people like Dan, who are high level, who like to give, who like to mentor. You surround yourself with people like this, you're going to become that. And finally, you talked about your book, Satan's War with God, was it? Sorry if I
Satan's War Against God. Yep.
Satan's War Against God. You have some great philosophies, and even if you're not a religious person, I think you're going to learn from this book. It's going to be an interesting read. You heard Dan talk. We have the link down there. Check out his book. And if you are a religious person, then it's right down your alley too. So definitely check out that book. I like the way you talk about the gift of death. That's such a nice way. You just talked about mindset. That's such a nice way to look at death as a gift, because it's there anyway, and the way you frame it is going to give you a better life. And finally, I would like to just say happy birthday. 58. You're just about to be 58. You've done a lot in your life. You're a great man who has given us a lot of great wisdom. I hope you have the birthday that you deserve.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
Awesome.
to our listeners, this is an extraordinary individual. Please get this. Our call to action is for everybody to share this podcast. Dan, something I didn't mention is that Dan is actually an avid listener of our Career Jitsu podcast. Yeah, he listens to all our episodes.
That must mean we are high level. If he is listening
Yes.
to our episodes, that means we are top echelon.
Yeah, and so we are absolutely honored to have you as a fan of our podcast, Dan. And that is an attribute to where we're going with this podcast. If Dan is listening to us and taking in all these insights, then everyone should, right? A few people that I would love, I want to just call out some names, because if these people can share this podcast, it's only going to help everyone. Bernardo Faria, please share this podcast. Marcos Tinoco, please share this podcast. Kenny Florian, please share this podcast. Sean Melanson, please share this podcast. Travis Stevens, you trained with Travis Stevens in judo. Please share this podcast.
And please do stay in touch with us. Let us know how you're doing. And thank you so much once again. Enjoy your weekend. You deserve it. And I will be connecting with you in August. And I think my kids would really, really learn from you. So thank you for offering to do that.
Thanks, guys. That was a blast. I enjoyed myself.
Thank you so much, Jan. Have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Well, there you have it. As we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the powerful connections we've explored between the art of jiu-jitsu and your career. In your workplace and in jiu-jitsu, you learn to adapt and navigate challenges. So remember that persistence and the courage to embrace the lessons that you learn are the keys to your growth both on the mat and in your career.